Okay, hello everybody. I'm Donatas URBONUS. This is URBONUS podcast, and I'm joined by my colleague Orazio Kauki. Orazio, what's up?
Good, Donatas. Thank you. It's good to be back, and I believe that for today we have some very interesting stuff to talk about it.
Yeah, you're right. But first of all, thanks a lot for your feedback after our first pod with Orazio, especially thanks to Partizan fans who came out with a good point, of which we didn't mention in our podcast about private sponsors and what else is going on, behind the Obradovic project, Partizan project. And it's not only the politics, not only the president is behind it, that's for sure. But we talked about it, about the politics so much that, maybe that's what some people may have take out from our first pod. But anyway, what do we have this week, Horacio?
I think that, for this week, one of the main topics is going to be, of course, the situation of Coach Kokoskov in Fenerbahce, because, of course, there have been a lot of reports coming from the United States that the Dallas Mavericks are really interested in hiring him. So for Fenerbahce is a tricky situation, because they basically finished to build the roster, but now they might need to replace the coach. So it's not an ideal situation when you're building the roster for the next season.
Yeah, and then we're gonna talk about Alexey Shved and his contract, which might surprise some people, especially who know either Alexey or CSKA front office better or have some relationship. And again, we're gonna talk more in depth about Milano Armani, about their summer, about the biggest moves they made, and what we should know, what was behind them. So let's begin with Igor Kokoskov. The Dallas Mavericks, according to Mark Stein, the Dallas Mavericks are nearing agreement actually to secure Igor Kokoskov, which is their top target, as an assistant to the new head coach Jason Kidd. Kokoskov signed a 3-year deal last year. It was guaranteed contract. And, I wonder how the buyout thing will be solved. But maybe, Horacio, you know something more from your insiders, from your sources, because as far as I know, you followed this story really closely.
I think that again, as I said before, the main issue was that this roster, was built with having Igor Kokoskov on mind as the head coach. So even the players, were picked because of his characteristics as a coach and for the system that he wanted to put in. And now, of course, there is the risk that you're going to need to replace him because there is this offer coming from the NBA. And again, as the reports from United States are saying, a deal should be pretty close between Coach Kokoskov and the Dallas Mavericks. The main thing I believe is that Fenerbahce will probably receive a buyout out of this situation. But again, I believe that several players are a bit surprised by this whole situation because they accepted, the offer from Fenerbahce with the idea that Kokoskov was going to be the coach, and now they will probably need to work with a different coach. And of course, this is not an ideal situation. I think that even, for Fenerbahce management, it's a very delicate situation, to try to find another coach at this point of the season. Also because maybe, with a different coach in place, there might be some new requests, for the market. He might request some new additions or maybe for some players to leave. So that's probably an additional work that the team didn't want in the first place. But that's the situation they are in right now. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. I believe that for the candidates, to replace Coach Kokoskov, there already been some reports about Coach Djordjevic, Sasha Djordjevic. Is now, of course, a free agent after the end of his experience with Virtus Bologna. I think it's a name that they are considering, at least based on the conversation that I had with some sources. But I think that they're still gonna take some time to maybe fully focus on a single candidate. They're gonna explore other options too, and but again, it's not exactly the best situation that you could have imagined, arriving at this point of the off season.
Yeah, from one point, I agree with you. As you mentioned, some players might be surprised, might be a bit concerned. For example, I see Pereira Henry a bit concerned because, for example, if he was moving away from Baskonia and he worked with Duško, maybe he was expecting a bit different coaching, which Coach Kokoskov can provide. So, for example, if he gets another, let's say, strict, old school EuroLeague coach, he shouldn't be very happy. But at the same time, I also think that whenever who gonna be the next head coach, he should be happy having this Fenerbahce squad, because you can agree that the signings they made, the roster they've built for the next season is really great, and probably it's easy to adjust. And of course, all the coaches have their own requests, as you said, but usually Fenerbahce has money to do some changes during the season. So in the end of the day, since they have such a good roster, that's not the worst case, because especially this roster is pretty flexible. It's, for example, Šarūnas Jasikevičius would have a very different team, and for our coach, it might be challenging to adjust and to put his game style. This Fenerbahce's team, I think, is very flexible for almost every coaching.
Yeah, I agree. Again, probably is not the ideal situation, but you can find, other coaches that can quickly adapt to this kind of roster, even without making major addition. Also, because I think that definitely, the management of the team wants to see this group together, for a while before deciding to make any other additions or departures, from the roster. So yeah, at the end of the day, they have built a pretty good roster so far, and whoever's gonna be the new coach when Kokoskov is expected to leave, I think he will have in his hands a very good group to work with, and the potential, to be one of the strongest teams in EuroLeague, and I think that's the kind of chance that several coaches, don't want to miss.
Yeah, the whole situation is strange because it's not usual, as you said, to build a team and then to have a coaching change. And from what I'm hearing, there are kind of mixed opinions around the Fenerbahce camp about all what's going on right now. There's one camp who might be pretty happy because some people maybe didn't believe that Igor is a right coach for this Fenerbahce team, and they expected more from him. But at the same time, as we mentioned before, there are some concerns that when coaching change happens right now, I mean, very tough and challenging period of a time when the team is set for the next season, it makes some things difficult to handle, But what is also interesting, what I was hearing about Igor Kokoskov, at least two sources told me that Igor was monitoring the NBA market to look for an assistant job. And if that's true, that means that he didn't enjoy European experience that much. We can remember failing to qualify for the Olympic Games with Serbia national team. We can remember how much stress he had, how much pressure he had with Fener when things didn't go well. And there's still so much pressure for the next season, especially when they invested in building this roster. But also what I'm hearing, that there might be a family factor too for Igor's side. But anyway, it's a bit strange situation. Yeah, and it seems like that Igor is not surprised about Dallas Mavericks offer, which came from the NBA.
Yeah, I think that the main issue is the fact that he got two very difficult jobs in Europe. Being the Serbian national team head coach and being the coach of Fenerbahce after the end of Zeljko Obradovic's tenure with the team. Those were two very difficult jobs to handle. I think for any coach, it was very difficult to handle those two situations. It's also a fact that Kokoskov has been in the United States for so many years. He has spent the majority of his career in the United States. He started to coach even at the NCAA level when he was still very, very young. And he had so many years an assistant coach in the NBA. I think at the end of the day, he's more used to the USA environment than to the European one, even if he had some good experiences, in Europe with the Georgian national team, then with the Slovenian national team. But those two jobs, with Fenerbahce and with the Serbian national team, they were difficult jobs to handle. A lot of pressure, a lot of expectations, two very difficult environments to deal with because, of course, Istanbul Fenerbahce fans, they always have very high expectation. And it's the same thing for the Serbian national team. Everyone expected to win the pre-Olympic tournament pretty easily, but that, of course, didn't happen. So I believe that in an assistant coach job, even with a team like the Dallas Mavericks, that's gonna have, of course, playoff ambitions. Maybe they are not ready to be title contenders yet, but the level of pressure, it's a little bit different, than compared to the European experience that Kokoskov is living, right now with Fenerbahce and with the Serbian national team.
Yeah, and if you remember, Kokoskov's hiring was really surprising. When Jelko left, they find a deal with Kokoskov very quickly, and Fenerbahce, made out of the box decision, and nobody expected that. And I'm thinking what Fener gonna do right now if they had enough with all these experiments, and they're gonna go back to some, let's say, traditional European coaching, or still they're gonna look for some talent from the NBA environment. You mentioned a bit about Sasha Djordjevic. What do you believe? What other candidates might be for this job, and what do you expect from Fenerbahce front office?
I agree with you when you say that they will probably gonna go with the coach that is currently in Europe, that maybe it doesn't come from an NBA environment, considering, of course, what the current situation. Aside from Coach Djordjevic, I believe that one potential candidate might be Sasa Obradovic, which is a name that I've been hearing, like connected to the club, even if I don't think there have been some concrete talks with him yet. The other options, I think, it's gonna be maybe going with a younger coach that maybe doesn't have a lot of EuroLeague experience yet. But of course, that might require some convincing, to the fans, because having a coach he doesn't have a lot of experience, especially at the EuroLeague level, I don't think is going to make the fans of Fenerbahce really happy, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't exclude local coach. There were some names the last summer. But when I think about the picture of the head coach, which Fener is looking at right now, and usually, when it takes changes, when we do some changes, we try to look for something different. And Kokoskov was very specific head coach. So if we talk about Fenerbahce changes and what kind of head coach they might be looking for, I expect some, let's say, more strict version of the head coach. I expect, let's say, the head coach who would make his players more accountable. And I just think that they're gonna look for some balance between, let's say, Jelko profile head coach and Kokoskov, because there is a feeling that Kokoskov was a bit too soft with the players. So I think that Fener will advance from this.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think that was one of the things that set some people, in Fenerbahce weren't happy about it. The fact that maybe it was a little bit too soft in some situation as an approach, to the players, and the fact that he might have missed that kind of force and strength that you need in some situation to get something out of the players, especially in difficult moments. Again, there were people, close to Fenerbahce that they were absolutely unhappy with the performance of the team in the finals, in the Turkish finals against Efes. It was basically a no contest. Efes completely dominated that series. And, again, several people close and around Fenerbahce, they weren't happy with the overall performance and with Kokoskov coaching because they expected more. I don't know how much fault Kokoskov has, because, to be honest, Efes in this season, it was just a better team than Fenerbahce. So there's not really much that you can do at some point when the difference is that big. But at the same time, during the season, there were moments in which Fenerbahce played really, really well. Even in EuroLeague, they had a very good momentum. They reached the playoffs. And maybe, if it wasn't for COVID, they had several COVID cases right before the start of the playoffs in EuroLeague. Maybe they could have been more of a challenge for CSKA Moscow. But of course, without all those players, the series against CSKA was really easy for the Russian team, because Fenerbahce missed a lot of players during that time.
Yeah, it's not an easy coach, and it's not an easy position, to work in. And let's continue with Alexey Shved, right? At least for now, by the time we're making a pod, we don't have an official announcement of CSKA Moscow, although it is expected to be in the beginning of this week. And then it's going to be clear what's the term of the contract. But from what I'm hearing, it might be something from 2 to 3 years. Alexey Shved is coming back to CSKA Moscow. And I have to start this story, with some funny thing, because from what I've been told, there was a moment in their life when Andrei Vatutin said he will never sign Shved again. And Shved said that he will never play for CSKA again. So it's a very intriguing reunion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising, because I believe that when the first time they got separated, Shved and CSKA, I don't think that the separation was really in friendly terms. So there were definitely some bad feelings between the management of the team and the player. But of course, now, many years have passed. The situation is completely different. And I believe also that Shved was in a very unique situation, because he was still under contract with Khimki for another 2 years. But Khimki basically didn't have enough resources to keep having him, because, of course, they had several financial troubles during the past season. They're not going to be in the VTB league next season because of these financial issues. So Shved had to go at some point, because he was also the most paid players on the team. And for CSKA, I think it was a very logical move in some ways, because they needed to replace the firepower of Mike James, who's not going to be again part of the team, of course, because with Coach Itudis, the relationship was completely broken. So it was impossible to let him go back to CSKA. So why not going after a player like Shved, who is, despite the fact that he might not be a young kid anymore, is still one of the best scorers at the EuroLeague level. he's a player who knows the environment really well in Moscow because he has played there for several years. And plus, from what I understood, there's going to be this very unique situation in which Khimki will still pay the player at least the difference between the contract that he's going to get with CSKA and the contract that he was getting with Khimki. So for CSKA, I believe, especially in the first 2 seasons of the deal, it's not going to be like a super rich deal. You know, they're not going to spend crazy money because some of those money will come from Khimki. So it's going to be a more affordable situation. So in the end, I believe it was like a very logical move for CSKA.
Yeah, although there are some risks, and we talked about all these risks with my colleague Rytis Vyšniauskas in the previous podcast. You can also watch it on YouTube, Basket News channel. But as risky it may sound, I would exclude 2 things. First of all, Shved is the best Russian player at the moment. That's for sure. And, CSKA is signing the best local player, where local players are important due to the VTB rules. And besides the basketball part, it might help to sell some tickets because Shved was actually bigger in Khimki. He was bigger than the club. In CSKA, it would be different, but still, we're talking about the superstar of Russian basketball. So that's a good move from marketing side. And as you already mentioned about money, from what I've heard, that's, let's say, a team-friendly deal. It should be something between 1 million and 1.5. But by CSKA standards, by Shved standards, that's a financially good signing. So if all these risks, when we have it to this CSKA game, let's say CSKA culture, CSKA game style, with all these risks, it's also, there are some good reasons why it's a good move. So it's going to be very interesting to watch, how this reunion will develop in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that it's going to be really interesting to watch Shved trying to adapt again to a situation in which is not going to be like the only superstar, because in Khimki, as you said, it was clear that he was bigger than the team. He was the clear superstar. He was the number 1 guy. In CSKA, it's going to be a little bit different, because you already have there several very important players with Shengelia, Milutinov, very good players. So he will need to share some of the responsibilities. And that's probably my biggest concern about the deal. Like, I want to see him in this environment, how he's going to deal with that, because it's going to be a different situation. Plus, Coach Itudis is a very strict coach. He can be very hard on the players. So if he doesn't play the way that Itudis wants him to play, there's going to be some issues. And we saw that happening before, of course, with Mike James, for example. So that's the thing that I want to understand the most, that I want to see the most, how he's going to adapt to this new situation in which he's not going to be like the only superstar of the team.
Yeah, and CSKA is on the market for 1 more player, despite having Shved, Hackett, Lundberg, Grigonis, also Ukov and Homenko on their backcourt. They're looking for 1 more guard, and Kostas Milajas from Gazeta reported it a while ago that they have an agreement in place with Kevin Pangos, but a lot of depends on if he's going to have NBA deal, because he's checking the NBA market, he's waiting for the free agency, and I'm hearing that there might be at least 1 NBA team which is very interested in signing Kevin. And there's a big chance that he will end up in the NBA. And if Pangos is gone, probably CSKA will take some risks, like we saw with, for example, Zenit St. Petersburg and signing Shabazz Napier. they are close to complete the roster, and we will definitely will be intrigued to see what the last signing will be.
Yeah, because as you said, with Pangos, the main issue is that he's really exploring the NBA market because he would love to play in the NBA. And as you said, there is at least one NBA team that is following him closely. And based on the information that I got, that team should be the Memphis Grizzlies. But of course, we will see what's going to happen when the free agency in the NBA will start. Because of course, if he won't find an offer that is really suitable for him, of course, he's going to have some really good market in EuroLeague. Again, there is this potential already agreement in place with CSKA Moscow. If they will be able to add him to the roster that they already have, that backcourt is going to be like really, really loaded with talent.
Oh yeah, and there's another team which is really loaded with talent. It's Milano Armani. They have Sergio Rodriguez, Malcolm Delaney, Devon Hall, Troy Daniels, Jerian Grant on their backcourt, Siobhan Shields, Moraschini, Luigi Datome, Mitoglu, Nicolo Melli as their forwards, Tarzuski, Heinz, and Biliga on the post. Also Davide Alviti, Gianpaolo Ricci, and Davide Moretti. That's a pretty good roster. And what are the feelings in Milano about their summer moves? Are they happy? How did they manage, to fill the open roster spots which were, open after Kevin Punter and Zach LeDay left Milano?
Yeah, I think that the management is pretty happy with the moves that they made during the summer. Some of the fans are not, but Milano's fans are very, very particular. They're basically never happy. So it's always very hard to make them happy, even when the team makes very big moves.
I think it's a regular problem. I think it's in whole Europe. It's the same. Yeah,
yeah,
basketball fans are just
like
never happy unless you win the championship.
Yeah, because as an Italian, I'm more close to the Olimpia Milano fans, and the feeling that I got is that basically every summer, no matter what the team does, they are always unhappy. So it's a little bit weird, but I believe that the management is happy with what they made this summer. I think that the roster is a little bit deeper than last season. One of the main issue of last season was that they didn't have much from the bench, especially down the stretch, in the final part of the season. And with several players being already, let's say, in the final part of their careers, Sergio Rodriguez, Kyle Hines, Gigi Datome, they are all veterans. Having to play 70, 80 games per season, at the end of the season, there's going to be a little bit fatigue, so you want to have a roster that can be as deep as possible, especially to have some kind of turnover, especially in the Italian league. I really like the addition of Devon Hall. I think he's a very interesting player. I believe he's already EuroLeague ready as a player, and he can definitely give a contribute. And I think that it's also very important the addition of Jerian Grant, because with him you're gonna help a little bit more Delaney, because with Jerian Grant, Delaney will probably have a little bit less playmaking responsibilities, and those responsibilities will go a little bit more to Grant. And that's important because I believe that Delaney is much more useful when he doesn't need to think too much about the playmaking situation, and is more free to express, his game. And plus, their number one target, of course, was to bring back Nicolo Melli. That was the number one option since the beginning of the summer. They really, really wanted him. They made a very good operation with him. They were able to sign him despite, the competition, because there was definitely competition for Melli. even, from Italy, because Virtus Bologna was also very interested in signing him. But Melli, he has already played for Milan in the past, and he really wanted to come back home, after the NBA experience and after several years, with Fenerbahce too, and the experience in Germany. He has been away from Italy for a very long time, and now he wanted to, to come back, being closer to home. Another player that I think is going to be a very, very important contributor is Mitoglu, because he's a guy that they really, really pushed to have, to sign. Even, with Mitoglu, there was a lot of competition. Panathinaikos tried to do everything they could to keep him around. But in the end, Milano was able to convince him. He's going to have, I believe, a very big role, also because he's a very versatile player. He can play many roles. He can play minutes as 3. He can play minutes as 4. He can even be some kind of a stretch 5. He's very big. He's very skilled, very smart player. And in the past few seasons, his 3-point shot has become more consistent. And if that 3-point shooting keeps being consistent, you're probably going to have one of the best forwards in Europe in your hands. So that's another very important addition. I think that probably the only thing that went wrong in some ways, it was the situation with LeDay, because I believe that at the beginning, that wasn't the plan. The plan was not to let him go away. But they needed to free some space in the front court. And I think that, especially at the beginning, their idea was, let's try to find some suitors for Tarjeski, who is still under contract for next season. And there is also an option for the season after. But he has a pretty good salary. He makes around 1 million in Milan. So there weren't a lot of teams that they were willing, to give him the same kind of salary. So in the end, Milano wasn't able to let him go, to unload him. So they needed to create some space in some other ways. And the only option available was to let LeDay go, because there was this option to opt out of the contract after one season. And they needed to make that move. But I don't think that was the original plan, But aside from that situation, I think that everything went pretty well for the team. And now the roster is basically complete. I think that maybe there still might be some possibility to see someone else go, among the Italian players. I think that one between Cinciarini and Moretti might leave the team, at least one of these two guys. Moretti played very, very limited minutes last season. I think he needs to play. He needs to be in a situation where he can play some real minutes. But the rest of the roster is basically set for the next season.
Yeah, I like the part where you said that Milano really, really wanted Nicolo Melli, because you're willing to unload Zach LeDay. I don't see any better example how much you can want somebody. And I was really surprised by this move. And as far as I know, not just me, but a lot of EuroLeague teams were really surprised by this move. And what was, more surprising, him signing with Partizan so quickly. It happened almost in 24 hours. And I know that many EuroLeague teams were ready to make a pitch, for Zach LeDay. And they were pretty angry when, they were informed that Zach LeDay has an agreement in place with Partizan, because if he was willing, to wait longer, probably he would have expected even a better deal with another team. So it was a really surprising summer for Milano. And I would like to point out Jerian Grant's situation. He's coming from Prometheus, the Greek team, and for me he's a good example of how crazy this free agency was, especially for the guards, because I remember that In the end of last season, or maybe just in the beginning of this free agency, Jerome Grant was offered to Žalgiris Kaunas, and they said no, and Grant, he was not that type of player, at least on this market in the beginning, who could have expect the Final Four team attention, and now he's here signing with Milano, so it was really surprising summer for Milano, but in the end of the day, I actually loved Zach LeDay and Kevin Punter so much that I'm not so sure that even with all these signings, with all these names, I'm not so sure if I prefer Zach LeDay and Kevin Punter or Nicolo, Melli, Hall, Grant, Mitoglu, and all of our signings. What do you think? If Milan improved?
I believe that especially with the Kevin Punter situation, the plan for Milan was, of course, trying to keep him around for another season. But the negotiation, they were very difficult because there were many teams interested, and the price really went up quickly. And Milano was willing to keep him, but only at a certain price. And when that price was off already, there were no chances to keep him around. I think that I'm not sure that they are better than last season. I think they are deeper. That's one thing that I'm sure about it. I'm not necessarily sure that they are better than last season. It's going to be a different team, of course, because, for example, in the backcourt, you're not going to have a scorer like Kevin Punter. You're going to have different type of players, Delaney, Hall, Jerome Grant. They are different type of players. I think that Grant, in the right situation, can become a little bit heated and having a 25 points game. And it is the same thing for Delaney. But they definitely have different characteristics compared to Punter. So I believe it's going to be a little bit more of a team that is not going to need maybe to put the ball in someone's hands and let him work, but is going to work really as a team because they have much more options and they are more versatile than last season. But as you said, I'm not necessarily sure that they are better than last season. They are just different, I believe.
I consider their last season as a success. I mean,
Absolutely.
that Final Four was a great success for Milano. They were so close to get into the finals, actually. They were like one punter shot away from making the finals. Yeah. It was a great season. But in the Italian championship, they were swept in the finals by Virtus Bologna. So I'm just curious, what were the reactions? As you said, Milano fans are never happy, but how shocking, how disappointing it was for Milano community to be swept by Virtus.
Yeah, they were very disappointed, especially because how the finals went. Milano was never in the series. They were always behind. It was a very difficult series for them. Virtus played really, really well. Djordjevic, with his defensive system, was able to limit a lot Milano's offense. And I think that also, during those finals, Milano's team, especially the key players, they were really, really tired. They were really, really tired. They didn't have enough energies. And while Virtus was in a great condition, because after they got eliminated from the Euro Cup in the semifinal against Unix, of course there was disappointment at that point too, but they were able to regroup. And from that point on, that season, their season was absolutely fantastic. They basically never missed a game, and they did a fantastic job. For Milano, it was different. I think that the Final Four, they got drained in the Final Four. They were without energies after that. And in the finals, that was pretty clear. And of course, there was a lot of disappointment in the environment. And, as it often happens in these situations, after the finals, a lot of rumors, started to spread about Coach Messina being unhappy with some players, that rumors about fights between players and the coach. But I believe this is pretty normal when you lose. Some things may be exaggerated, taken out of context, because during such a long season, I think it's pretty normal to have some kind of, discussions between the coach and the players. It's normal. But until you keep a certain level of respect, then, the day after, everything is okay, everything is normal. So I believe that some of those rumors were definitely exaggerated a little bit. For example, there was
Luigi
one
Datome rumor, right?
Yeah, there was one about Datome, that he had a big fight with Coach Messina and he was ready to leave the team. But that was never the situation. Yeah, they had some discussions, of course. Datome maybe was a little bit unhappy because of the playing time during the finals, because he didn't play much. But I believe it's a normal discussion that you have with your coach when a situation like this happens. But in the environment around Milano, these kind of things often, they have been taken out of context and they have been exaggerated.
Yeah, let's hope that death gonna help them, the next season. Do you have anything else to add about your team?
Not about Milano. I think we are good with them.
Yeah, you're originally a Milano fan?
No, not really. Because I'm from like southern Italy, from Sicily, and I never been like a Milano fan. My favorite team in Italy growing up was Fortitudo Bologna.
Okay, that's
but
a good team.
Of course, in my adolescence, they had a lot of issues. For a certain period of time, there wasn't even a team because of the financial issues and struggles. But yeah, originally my favorite team was Fortitudo Bologna in Italy.
Yeah, legendary Bologna skipper with Fuchka on the team. It was a great team.
That was a great team, yeah.
Okay, my friends. So thanks a lot for you. Thanks a lot for our listeners. You can follow us on basketnews.com. First of all, just once again, it's a new basketball project where we're not just discussing things on podcasts, but we also publish feature articles. We publish all the other stories of free agency, interviews, and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff you can get on basketnews.com. And also, it's easy to follow us on YouTube channel Basket News. Also, we have a channel on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, all the main platforms where you can find us. So thanks a lot, Orazio, and see you the next week, probably.
Thank you, Donatas, and thank you to all our listeners. It was a pleasure, and keep following us on basketnews.com.